Welcome back to another episode of Questions with Crocker with me, Dr. Crocker, and my husband, Shane.
Hey.
You're back.
I'm back.
Back and ready for action.
On April Fool's Day.
Oh, it is April Fool's. I should have played a trick on you.
What trick?
I don't know. I'm not. I'm too tired to play tricks. Okay, so if you're new to this podcast, I'm an emergency veterinarian. Shane is an entrepreneur, finance guy that married me and is a part of this crazy vet med life. We own a DP hospital together. I work emergency shifts. I travel, I speak, do a little bit of social media, and we have a good time. So we started this podcast to share what goes on behind the scenes of owning a vet hospital and answer all your questions that we can't really answer on social media. Shane wouldn't answer them anyways. He's not on social media. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us on Apple or Spotify. You can comment on the text link that is at the top of all those things. And you can leave us a review. I feel like I did it all.
Are people leaving reviews?
I honestly don't know. We had more than I thought we did last I checked. And they were actually nice. So that was kind of fun. And then the best part is I just went to a conference and it was a ton of students, the student AVMA one, and a ton of students came up and said they listened to the podcast. So that makes me really happy because when I started social media, it was literally so I could connect with vet students. And a lot of them said they were interested in practice ownership or they just like hearing the cases that I share. So they did mention you too, which, do you feel like a star?
I do not, no. That is not a feeling I have.
So I did go to that conference, but the good news is I am going to be going to less conferences coming up this conference season. I've decided to try to be more intentional with my time here at home. We're hiring a new vet in May. I want to be around, be available for mentorship, make sure I set the standard for kind of how I want things to run at the practice. We're hiring 2 new people right now, actually 3 new people right now. Your face.
I think that went through the finance committee.
Well, okay. So we lost one person. One is going to vet school, and we're transitioning someone out of the call center to a technician role who used to be a technician. And so we're just kind of moving and shifting. So 2 full-timers, 1 part-timer.
Okay. The math still doesn't add up. You lose 2, you hire 3.
We hired 2 in like a quarter. And financially, it's still
This is Starbucks math.
It's gonna be. What is Starbucks math?
All the math you use for calculating stuff you base it on Starbucks drinks.
There's literally nothing that makes me happier than when I get my iced coffee, even when it's freezing. So that is priceless. That is priceless. That is, you can't even touch that with a 10-foot pole. But I would say maybe it is more veterinary math than CFO finance math. Yeah. Speaking of that, we had an interesting meeting today. We met with Profit Solver. Why don't you tell everybody what that is?
Yeah, it's a group. I think the guy that started was a CPA and had a buddy that owned a vet hospital. And the buddy was basically like, I need help trying to figure out if I'm pricing things correctly. And it just kind of has evolved over the last 10, 15 years into what it is today. But they do a much better version of kind of what we do today. Which is basically looking at finances and breaking things down on an individual basis so we can understand exactly what's going on with our finances and try to understand the profitability of the overall clinic, understand are we being efficient with our staff, are we meeting certain benchmark industry standards.
And how did you walk away from this meeting feeling?
There's nothing so far that is surprised. I think it's good to validate, though. I mean, I think we had a good feeling of how we were looking at everything, and they basically validated what we already know. And now we're going to dig deeper and start figuring out, are there areas where maybe we're not accounting for some of the costs like we should and some of our procedures and things of that nature.
Like how many team members we're using for things and whatnot. I think my fear with using something like this was they were just going to come in and be like, raise your prices, so much money. And we've tried really, really hard with this practice to be intentional about being a reasonable option for pet owners. We don't want to be the lowest cost. We're not a nonprofit, 501 grants. Yeah, that has, so we're not the lowest cost, and that's okay, but I don't want to be the highest cost. And we did do a little bit of secret shopping. We looked around when we were looking at price setting, and pretty much everyone is corporate around us. And I was actually shocked by some of the prices that I was getting. So I feel like we are very competitive, very reasonable. We get really good word of mouth. We're growing like crazy. But I just didn't want someone to come in and say, just raise all the prices. And they don't do that. They actually look and say, what are you doing you're not charging for? What is your team working on? How many people is it taking to do different things? So far, I'm very excited about it. And then what they said is basically you tell us like how profitable do you want to be, and we give you suggestions and you do or don't do what we say. And so I think it's always good to talk to people, especially in business, who are better than you at what.
Yeah, I mean, we could do the same exercise. We can look at the cost of a dental and go through and figure out how many people are involved, allocate costs to the dental x-ray and, all the other machines.
Anesthesia machine.
But they basically created a software where you can go in and plug that information in, and then everything just kind of flows downhill. And you can go in and adjust your profitability targets inside of there and adjust the prices for you. So they've created a really cool tool, and you can look at every single procedure across the board, which would have taken us
forever.
The entire year to put together, basically. So
well, and I think that you and I are both big believers in, there's things that we need to do. There's things we need to spend our time doing and make sense for us, just the value. And then there's a lot of things that we can outsource and things that we want to pay someone, what they deserve to help us with. So I think it's going to be good. We had our practice manager be a part of it. That's always important to have kind of your leadership team as a whole, talking about these things, about the vision overall of what we want to do. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But overall, are you excited that I'm going to be traveling less and going to be around more?
Yes.
That was not very enthusiastic.
That was very enthusiastic.
For you,
yes.
That was enthusiastic?
Yes.
Do you think you get more excited about playing golf and having a good round? Or no,
when I'm playing good golf, maybe.
When it's subpar golf, then I win, is what you're saying. That's funny. So you are going to have me do another whiteboard session, which is something you introduced me to when we first started the practice. I wasn't really familiar with the concept at all. And so basically what it is that you get together and you sit and talk about where do we want to be in 6 months, in a year, 2 to 3 years, and 5 years. And we're going to look at our past whiteboard session, see what we've accomplished, what we still need to do. But it's a really nice way to kind of plan things out. And I think also to show like, okay, we've done all these things, because sometimes to me, it feels like it's not happening fast enough. And I know we're trying to lay a good foundation and we're trying not to overwhelm the team with changes and we're really being intentional. But sometimes it's like, I just want to go in and blow it all up and do things, completely different. I also feel like we're building a team that we really believe in, and that takes time and energy. So I am excited to do a whiteboard session with you. I think it's always interesting. We look at things very differently, which is a strength in my opinion. But I think we're going to mark a lot of things off from the last time.
I hope so.
And you're going to say that we don't have money to spend on anything else.
That's where the whiteboard session is going.
The whiteboard session is for me to be like, look at what you did. Now you're out of money. No, yes. I'm joking. Okay. So a couple things interesting are happening on social media. And one of the main ones I wanted to talk about is there's an account I follow at Tactical Veterinarian. He works a lot on working dogs and shows really cool videos of the working dogs doing different things. But he also talks a lot about veterinary medicine in general, how much it's changed and how, when he got out of school, kind of similar to me, like worked a ton of hours, barely got paid anything, was really about seeing a lot of cases, growing his skill set, and then over time has gotten more and more successful, like financially and with the things that he's doing. And that maybe there's a difference in the way that new grads or younger vets kind of look at things in how they budget and kind of how they perceive saving versus spending when they first get out, and how many hours they're willing to work to kind of lay that foundation of like skill set. So it shares a lot just about how he did it and also the things that he gets and feedback wise from like other younger veterinarians. So he posted something about the fact that he's actually seeing a shift in veterinary medicine and seeing practices that are closing, which was unheard of a while ago. I mean, COVID, we saw such an explosion. Everyone was going into veterinary medicine from, venture capitalism. And so we were just seeing a huge influx of money and practices going up. And I also have noticed this just because we're trying to hire right now, and I'm getting the same story from different people where they're saying, yeah, my clinic closed. I had a week's notice, and then they closed the doors. And so they were looking for new jobs. And these are well-trained individuals in veterinary medicine. And he posted about actual veterinarians that were being let go, which used to be, if you got a veterinarian, it was like gold, right? So the idea that they would be firing veterinarians and closing locations is just mind-blowing. So as someone who kind of lives more in the world of economics and finance and all that, what are your initial thoughts when you're hearing things like this?
I think it's probably a market correction more than anything. So, like you said, during COVID and other times, we had a real spike in people coming into the vet hospital. They had more time on their hand. More people were getting pets because they had nothing else to do.
They were sitting at home watching their pets too. I mean, we would get calls about things and people are like, oh my gosh, my dog licks and itches itself all the time. And you're like, yeah, that's been going on for years. But they were there.
Yeah. And
they were staring at it. Yeah.
So I think you had a lot of new people, maybe having things done that historically have not done.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it was kind of a supply and demand issue where you had a whole lot of demand, not a lot of supply, so prices started going up. At the same time, you had, like you said, PEG groups and others buying into the vet space.
Wait, what did PEG groups?
Private equity groups coming into the vet space.
Using your finance language.
And then basically just doing their things that they do, which is look at areas where you can increase margins, increase profitability, and kind of went full tilt into raising prices, which led to everybody else around the block raising prices to kind of keep up with the market. So I think there was a huge increase in pricing over that time.
And in, let's not lie, also in salaries, also in
that's
benefits.
What I'm saying. Everything just kind of moved.
Overall, kind of everything.
Which was probably a correction that needed to be done anyways in vet med. It was probably lagging.
Yes.
But there's probably an overcorrection there. Now we're seeing a new correction where, the demand's going down and you have an oversupply, which is driving margins back down. And sometimes it's easier for these groups to say, let's figure out the markets so we can exit and strategically exit certain markets because they're not as profitable and it's bringing down, the bottom line. Also, you had a lot of not necessarily shady stuff happening at the same time, but when you're seeing multiples as high as you were seeing them, you were having groups coming in and they were going to bare bones staff to increase their profitability and then getting huge multiples on their EBITDA margins and selling out, right? So you had people that were wanting to buy. Now they're overpaying for practices. And they're trying to support that over the last couple of years and just can't do it. Yeah. So I think what you're seeing is these private equity groups and other large corporations exiting markets that just aren't as profitable.
Well, and it is interesting. One of the things I saw is a lot of it is the urgent cares. And so the theory behind that is that during COVID, everyone was so busy with just even preventative medicine and new clients that they weren't seeing as many sick and urgent pets because they were just booked out weeks with those types of procedures, routine spays and neuters, things like that. Well, now that we've gone back to kind of pre-COVID numbers, a lot of general practices, which I would agree, we also see a lot more same-day sick pets, urgent visits, and they're not going to these other locations, to those kind of middle locations. So I did also hear...
And the reality is those local GP practices are probably doing things cheaper than urgent care.
Yes.
I mean, urgent care might not have the premium that ERs have, but still have a premium on their visits and all the procedures. So if you call your GP and then get you in for cheaper, of course you're going to go there before you go the alternative route.
So I always, I hear things, then I see things, but I put up a question box just to ask, is anyone else seeing this or experiencing this? Or are you seeing a slowdown in general? And it was really interesting because there was a ton of people that said, we have not slowed at all. So areas of Tennessee, areas of Georgia, areas in California, just certain areas that were like, no, we're still really, really overwhelmed. But definitely had more people saying, yes, we've slowed. We've slowed a lot. A lot of people said it did feel like pre-COVID. It didn't feel like a lower than that slowdown, but pretty interesting. And then some people said they were actually leaving their clinics because they were trying to go to one that was busier, especially if they were paid on production. So I could see where that would be a big issue. And then there were a couple specialty ER type facilities that also said they were slowing down, which is interesting because usually those are more protected because it's kind of a higher income individual in general that's going to go to specialty especially. But they said that they were seeing it slow down. There is also ones that said that their corporate told them that they were having layoffs and restructuring, but they were doing it at the admin and middle management level. So they weren't really affecting the practices, but they were seeing a big shift in cutting out kind of some of the middle management and C-suite people. One person said a local Blue Pearl shut down suddenly, so in a week, and laid off their entire staff. And so another person said their location shut down, but their corporation just moved them to another location. So that would be, like you said, shutting down underperforming hospitals and then having more. But the interesting thing was some people said, this is happening in veterinary medicine, but it's happening in all industries.
Yeah, across the board.
So it's happening in airlines and nurses and everything.
The economy in general, but also the advancement of like AI and other technologies. So you may not need some of that middle management support because you're running data through AI and everything else to help with scheduling or, call centers going to, more robo-type calls. I mean, there's probably a lot of areas where jobs are getting eliminated because of newer technology as well. So,
well, and some of the really busy clinics did say, like, we're really busy, but we actually should be like a 5-doctor practice and we only have 2 doctors. Or we used to be a 7-doctor practice and we only have 3 doctors. So there is also a difference in if you're really, really busy, but you used to be at a much higher capacity and you've slowed down, right? Or you've gotten busier because of that. So I think overall, I mean, I had a ton of messages. I can't even go through all of them. But I do think that it's an interesting dynamic, and we did need a course correction and just how behind vet med was with inflation and things like that. But I just am interested to see what happens. And I think it's a great time to own a private practice and to really differentiate yourself as a private practice, not corporate. And I think people come to us at this point in time because of that. And they feel like we have kind of a sweet spot.
I mean, again, I'm a finance guy, but I look at it as the same as like at banks, right? I mean, you got small local banks where you walk in and you can sit in front of a decision maker and get loans done and get things done immediately. Where some of the other larger banks, they don't even have drive-throughs anymore. They've got one teller and it's a long line because they want you to use the ATM or the phone deposits, things of that nature. So big companies are finding ways to use technology and drive people to use their technology versus you sometimes want to walk in and see somebody. I think you're going to see the same with some of these large companies that they're going to, cut back on maybe some of the CSR positions or, use technology for booking appointments and things of that nature.
You even have AI that's reading x-rays now. You have AI that's reading path reports. You have AI that's reading your fecals. So honestly, if you used to have like a lab tech, right, at your hospital and they would do all that, if you have, someone who now just has to set it up and the machine does everything and runs it, or if a specialty hospital or a lab employs somebody to do those things, I mean, you can cut some of that out. So,
and the other question that would be interesting to look at is, maybe the top line is coming down, right? Maybe they're not driving as much revenue, but are they still as profitable?
Like hospitals individually?
Individually, and how it rolls up to the corporation. So, some of these big companies, when they're looking to downsize locations that aren't good performers, they may not care as much about the top line. They just want to look at their margins and what they're dropping to the bottom line for some of these areas.
Well, and especially if they're looking to consolidate over time, then they're just trying to make things look better and they don't really care at that point in time. So I do think that overall, what I try to do is not compete against corporations and not compete against low costs. And I try to just keep us really focused on what our goal is as a practice and our intention is, and just really market and make sure our culture aligns with that. And that is not easy sometimes. The feeling of being unsettled when you hear people being laid off or things changing or inflation being so much is really hard, I think. And it's a struggle to not make decisions based off of some of these big swings or big rumors even that you hear happening. So I like that I'm married to you and you kind of really dial us back to, okay, what are the numbers? What are the facts of how the practice is working? I think that's kept me more centered, and I haven't made any wild decisions where I am looking to, try to not hire a new vet, even though there's one available and things like that, because I really think we are growing and I'm going to keep believing in our practice overall and like what we're doing for the community. So
I would also say that we have historically always been in a little bit of a bubble in the place that we live.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that we would really see a huge tell-off.
Huge difference.
I mean,
Yeah.
We're going to see some down times and revenue may not be as high as, historically it could have been, but I think we're in a little bit of a bubble compared to, some places in
that is true.
throughout the U.S.
That is true. Because even one of the other comments I got from 3 different people was they're in D.C. and because of all the changes happening there, their practices were really struggling. So I would agree with you. A lot of people are moving to Texas and there's definitely an advantage to being somewhere that you're seeing an influx of people versus...
I mean, even our specific location where they're building, a new house development right behind us. I mean, that's going to funnel. We have to prepare for that, knowing that we're going to get additional relationships based off of that.
Right.
So,
and we want to have those appointments available so we can get the people when they call. So I do think, so this podcast is based off of questions and I have a serious question that I want to answer. But first I want to answer one of the trolls on social media because it's always interesting to me the things that people will put out there when they're like behind a computer screen. So I posted a video talking about how we had 4 THC toxicity dogs in the ER in one shift. 2 of them had to be hospitalized because they were so severely affected. Their heart rates were really low. They were almost non-responsive and they required hospitalization. And then we were going to give them potentially intralipids, which you give in the vein and it actually binds the THC if they're like really severely depressed. And so I posted about it and I was like, this is something, these are the signs. So THC toxicity in pets, number 1, they're dribbling urine. That's one of the big ones. They'll be hyperesthetic, which means if you move your hand kind of towards their face, instead of just kind of like closing their eye, they'll be like, it's like this extreme reaction to like all stimulus. They'll look like they're falling asleep and then they're just like really startled. And then obviously they'll have a low heart rate sometimes. They'll be really, really depressed, things like that. So I was just posting about it so people will kind of know what the signs are and know how serious it could be. And the post kind of went off a little bit. And so one person at Big Worm said, "Is it true that vet visits can be $200 just to find out your dog is high?" And at first I was like, maybe this is like a real question, right? But then I'm like, no, like it feels a little snarky to me. And so I said, it is true that getting a thorough exam and the knowledge we have accumulated for many years is $200. Yes. And it's even more if your pet's high enough that they are dying and we have to save their lives. And I was just like, why? Like, why even say that and why even put that overall? But yes, if you don't know what's going on with your pet and you come in to see me, it costs money, even if I end up not doing anything and tell you to go home and let him sleep it off. And that is because we've worked really hard to accumulate this knowledge and this information. And every single day I give an owner a diagnosis and they have no idea what I'm talking about and they don't understand it at all.
Same thing when you call a plumber because your toilet stopped up. You know it's stopped up.
100%.
They're going to confirm, yeah, it stopped up. Do you want to fix it or not?
Yeah. And then
but they're going to charge you to come over and tell you that.
Here's all the reasons why it could be stopped up. And here's what I have to do to figure out why. And here's what I have to do to fix it. But it was just, people are so snarky sometimes. And I feel like for the most part, I try to be like, I'm here to educate. But occasionally it's like I have to just kind of put something out there a little bit because we are people too. And the things that you say sometimes are very rude. And I don't think that I should just sit here and people will say, well, that was sassy or that was whatever. And I'm like, how come you're allowed to say whatever and I'm not allowed to say anything? So the double standard is not happening on my page. And then he didn't reply anymore after that because he didn't have anything that he could say. So let's get to the real question. This podcast is based off of questions that you submit. And I got a good one that I thought was interesting. And it's one that I've kind of hit on before. But at eBabyB said, "Hi, Dr. Crocker. My name is Emily, and I have been working as a livestock vet in California since graduating in 2023. My husband recently just matched for a pediatric residency in Kansas. Congratulations. And after researching, it seems like a majority of jobs are going to be mixed animal or predominantly small animal. And even if things are mixed animal, you're going to do more small animal than large animal. I know you transitioned from being an equine vet to small animal, and I was just wondering, how did you do it? I'm just afraid no one is going to want to mentor a vet that has been out of school for going on 2 years. Did you do a bunch of CE? Did you go into a clinic that offered mentorship, or did you just learn as you go? I appreciate you reading this message." So, hi, Emily. I love answering this question because I actually get it quite frequently since I did transition from equine to small animal. First, I want to ask you, when I said I'm going to small animal more consistently, did you feel like concerned at all that I wouldn't be able to do it? Or how did you feel like I felt about it and my level of concern?
I never had any concern over your ability to do it. I think my concern was more, is this the right decision
For me.
for you, right? It's the right decision for the family, right decision for the kids, but is it the right decision for you? And that ultimately is probably the most important that needs to be answered.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like she's very open to doing what she needs to do for her family. And honestly, if he's doing a residency, it may be they're going to spend 3-4 years there and then move and be able to go back. But what I will tell you, Emily, is I definitely had a little bit of nervousness and anxiety, but I was really intentional about finding a practice where I did have really strong mentors. There wasn't a structured traditional mentorship program. So it wasn't like, hey, you're going to shadow me for so long and then you're going to do surgery with me for so long and then we'll slowly build up to. But basically what it was them saying, you've already been practicing for a couple of years. You know how to talk to clients. We're not worried about that. But any medical questions you have, or if you're nervous about a surgery, just let us know. Like, let's just communicate about things. And there was a couple surgeries where I said, I really want to watch you do that first. And small animal dentistry was a big one that I had not really done. I didn't really do the rotation when I was in vet school. I hadn't done any of it. I'd done a ton of horse teeth, but really didn't know what I was getting into. So that was probably the one that made me the most nervous. So I watched and assisted in a lot of different extractions, and I did do a lot of CE about dentistry in particular to learn how to read x-rays. But for almost everything else, I found that a lot of it, like if you did surgery, you could do surgery in small animal. If you remembered anatomy, you could do the surgery that you needed to. And then talking to owners, I think is the hardest part of veterinary medicine. And that is something that after 2 years in practice, you're already going to have a handle on. And so I think that the nervousness comes from some of those higher level procedures or not knowing how to really read a small animal x-ray, not knowing how to do ultrasound. And I definitely think CE, webinars, things like that can help. But having a good mentor is the best part overall.
You also did quite a bit of not going directly to work for one place. You did some, whatever's called relief type work.
Yeah, when I started.
And you were kind of able to dictate, what you were comfortable doing and not, because they just needed somebody to come in and see patients. You could dictate kind of what you
do
were
vaccines and stuff
comfortable
like that.
doing. And I think that kind of got your feet wet back into small animal as well.
Yeah, and when you do relief, you don't see as many patients.
Yeah.
So I do think starting out, having a schedule that allows you to take a minute, check up on something, read up on something, look up a drug dosage. I mean, now I feel like I have so many drug dosages memorized for small animal, but that was one thing that took a lot more time with cases. So I would have a discussion around how long appointments are, how many patients you're expected to see. If you're not comfortable with surgery right away, I think it's reasonable to say, I want to watch, 1 or 2, and then I want somebody just available if I do surgery. But really, to me, the biggest thing is communicating. It's just communicating what you need. It's communicating if you want to kind of be pushed to learn and do more, or if you need a little extra time to get comfortable with where you're at. And the biggest issue I see is when younger people sometimes become uncomfortable. They just are scared to try and do anything. And so you really just have to talk through those moments and kind of push yourself a little bit. And really, the more you do it, the more you're like, okay, I remember this. I remember this from vet school. I remember hearing about this. And you'll just start to quickly get into the repetition and get better at it, I think, overall. But you have to just communicate what you need and do a little bit of learning on your own. But I think on the job
definitely
training,
be strategic of where you go. I mean, you don't want to go to one practice and maybe they're going to offer you more money or whatever, better schedule. But, if you have no mentorship or they're just kind of throwing you to the wolves, that may not be the right practice out of the gate.
I'd probably try to go to a multi-doctor practice just because the more doctors available, the more possibility for mentorship and to kind of watch more procedures. But I think ultimately, as long as you are the type of person that is willing to jump in and learn, I think you're going to be fine. And especially coming from large animal, I feel confident that that is probably something that you already are. So you can always reach out to me if you have additional questions. I initially had a hard time when I made the transition. The The flow was different. The culture was different. Having so many people available to help me was actually kind of weird, but very grateful to have found a good place to go when I first started out. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that answers the question. And if you want to reach out, just let me know. You can find us at Questions with Crocker on any of the social media platforms. You can watch us on Spotify or YouTube. No,
YouTube.
You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify or Apple. We're going to go tuck our kids in bed. We're going to go to sleep ourselves because tomorrow is another day, more work to do. And we hope you guys have a great night. Thanks so much for listening. And do you have anything to say?
That's it. I was resetting a credit card for a big meal they're fixing to pay for one of other businesses. So
part of business ownership is approving charges.
They're taking clients out to dinner, and the guy just texts me and says, "This is a really large bill. Do I have enough availability in my credit card?"
Okay. So well, we're going to go make sure we have money in the account to pay everyone this week, and we hope you guys have a great night. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure to leave a review if you enjoyed this episode. Bye.